are thrilled and very fortunate to have Carmen Zahra with us. As I mentioned, she is the National Director of Outreach at the College Living Experience, otherwise known as CLE. CLE is a transition program for neurodivergent teens, young adults who have exited high school and are exploring different post-secondary options. And so with that, I'm going to let Carmen take it the rest of the way. She's going to be sharing with us some more of her expertise about more of like the soft skills that are going to help your teens and young adults be ready for post-secondary success. So Carmen, with that, it's all yours.
Kevin, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I love to see a lot of Northeastern families. I'm slightly biased because I just happen to be in the Rockville, Maryland location. So, and I actually see a couple of familiar faces as well. So we're just gonna dive in really quickly. There's a couple junior and senior families here. So not just are we gonna delve into the soft skills, we're also going to discuss what's the difference between an IEP and a 504. I get so many questions. A lot of families, unfortunately, don't know that an IEP actually ends up stopping at college, whereas a 504, you can actually take to college. We're also going to start describing the steps necessary to receive support in college or university. We're going to explore how to incorporate the executive functioning, social, and self-advocacy skills in transition planning for both at home and at school. So let's get started with some data. The data that I'm showing here is actually a key indicator that the barriers of disclosing a difference in college and obtaining accommodations are significant and require action. But most importantly, they require the knowledge and confidence to help change this system. Some of our students may not be ready to disclose. However, if you're not ready to disclose, you cannot receive accommodations from your college or university, unfortunately. So, as many of you know, these barriers have dramatic impacts on students, especially with recent studies showing more instances of mental health issues and lower college completion rates between students with differences and their peers. So I was talking a little bit before about the differences between IEPs and 504s. The very basic difference here between the IEP and a 504 can be summed up in one sentence. Both plans provide for accommodations. However, only an IEP provides for specialized instruction for students in grades K through 12, while a 504 plan serves students at both K through 12 and college. Now, it's important to know that the most fundamental difference between an IEP and a 504 plan is that they're governed by different laws. What I mean is that an IEP is actually governed by the special education law. The 504 is governed by civil rights law. And that makes a difference in what services and how an IEP plan and 504 plan come together. So for example, for an IEP plan, you must have one of the three specified conditions or differences that are actually written in the law. For example, a specific learning difference, which would be something similar to dyslexia, right, would be a condition that a child or student would qualify for an IEP. Now, that difference must also affect their performance in the classroom. And that's important to know because sometimes parents think that simply having a disability or a difference qualifies them for an IEP. But you also need to make sure that it's making a difference in the classroom. And that's what's called an educational impact, an adverse impact in the classroom for how your child is learning. Now, on the flip side here, for a 504 plan, a student needs to have a difference that's getting in the way of his or her or their learning in the general educational classroom. Now, the difference isn't that they need specialized instruction. It's that they need a change to benefit from their education the same way as other kiddos in that classroom. So for example, a student who has ADHD, they will typically have a 504 plan. And what happens is that just the changes are made to their classroom environment, and those changes are called accommodations. Now, those changes that are made in the general education classroom don't require specialized instruction. So again, for example, that student with ADHD may just require some extra time on an exam or extra time getting his homework done or her or their homework done. Now, I heard some families and some students be concerned that a 504 plan may not be as good as an IEP. And the truth of the matter is that a 504 plan and an IEP can both meet your students' needs. It just depends how well written and put together it is. A well-written, well-implemented plan that everybody knows what's going to happen and what's in place and what's working and what's not working for that student is the best. If there's follow through, everybody's constantly checking in and making sure it's working very well, they both can be helpful for the students. And it's really, really important to start, especially those kiddos who have IEPs, start including them in those meetings as early as possible. That way they know exactly what accommodations they may be receiving, what diagnosis and what supports they currently have. That way when they move on to college, they're able to self-disclose and feel comfortable to do that. Now, here I've listed some roles and responsibilities that students, the college, universities, disability support services, and the faculty's responsibilities are. Now, as you can see on the far left side here, that student has a bit of responsibilities, including registering with the school's disability support service department. Now, before you even do that, you have to have that conversation, whether or not your student feels comfortable and confident self-identifying, right? Some students may not be there yet, and that's okay. However, that next step is you need to provide current documentation. Does your student know what their current documentation is? It's good to also include them in all medical and therapeutic assessments as well. So that way they're also informed. So the student's also going to have to request academic accommodations. So that's going to ensure that they have access to not just the information, but also their ability to test on an equal level with the students who may not have differences. Now, once they've self-identified with the disability support services, the professor will also be informed. That said, I would highly encourage your student to also check in with the professor in the beginning of class, mid-semester, and throughout those months that maybe there's an exam that they are struggling with. And just reminding them, these are my accommodations, please don't forget. Because while the professor may have had that heads up moment from the support services department, sometimes things fall through the cracks. And so it's your students' responsibility also to just keep them up to date and communicate with all of their professors and also sometimes their peers. So I just want to make it very clear that faculty will always do their best to ensure that they are following all of the accommodations listed in the accommodations letter. That said, I, again, encourage you always to check in. So some traditional accommodations that we may see here are the additional time. Maybe they'll give you class notes after a session or after a lecture. You'll have a assistive technology. Some people may need, let's say, auditory adjustments. Now, here are just some of the few. A lot of colleges may have some other ones that are worth considering as well. But if you want to be able to access all of these accommodations, again, you must self-identify. And that's going back to being comfortable and confident, right? So moving on. Dun, dun, dun. Transition planning. This is my bread and butter. This is what I'm most excited about. Again, our students, they are resilient. They always say, don't worry, I got this, right? But what's really important here is transition needs to extend beyond the academics. All of these skills that can be embedded into the school curriculum and even discussed in college counseling involve the soft skills, right? And those soft skills are the best predictors of post-secondary success. Data actually shows that it is a much better predictor than academic success. So let's get into it. These are the soft skills for post-secondary success, because again, I have here college success, but not every single student, right, is ready for college or is interested in going to college right off the bat. So soft skills are the skills that enable an individual to interact effectively with other people, right? Families of the special education students really can make sure those goals to build soft skills are incorporated, not just in the IEPs during middle and high school years, but also maybe sometimes in elementary school. It just really depends where your student is. So individuals can start developing these soft skills through socialization, learning values, attitudes, and actions through interactions with others. Because at the end of the day, socialization and relationship building are a critical part of adolescence, right? Now, by adding this important element to their home life, their instructional plans, and also their classrooms, both the academic team, their educators, and their home team, their families, can help prepare all of these kiddos for success after graduation. So here we have executive functioning. That essentially includes proficiency in adaptable thinking, self-control, working memory, time management, and most importantly, organization. And I know I myself sometimes struggle with organization, but I've throughout the years found little tips and tricks that have helped me with that piece. When it comes to social skills, that includes verbal, nonverbal communication, such as speech, gestures, facial, body language, all of that, which also it takes practice to really gain those skills. Finally, we have self-advocacy. Now, in order to be the best self-advocate, you have to really pay attention and know how to self-monitor. Now, some of the self-advocacy skills that you may already be familiar with are being assertive, knowing your rights, negotiating and speaking up for oneself, or just simply for a cause that you feel passionate about. Now, here we have executive functioning. What is the end goal here for executive functioning? Now, I've listed here on the right side a little blurb from our independent living skills checklist, and it's typically one of our most popular executive functioning tools. It was created for students, parents, and even professionals to use this in not only skills assessment, but also with development. So as part of the ongoing preparation for adulthood, placing young adults in the role of managing all of their various activities for daily living, it helps them in the long haul. So here, if you'd actually like a copy of our ILS checklist, put it in the chat, put your email address, and I will send you a copy later this week, actually. So as I was saying, the end goal for executive functioning is really, are your students able to wake up on time independently without you going into the room and waking them up? Are they able to create a meal for themselves? Are they able to go to the grocery store and create a list that will create that meal? Now, what about their room? What does it look like? When you ask them to take out the trash, do some dishes, what is typically the response? I know a lot of my nieces and nephews, what they would say. And sometimes they're just not too keen on it. And so a lot of our family members have begun these incentive-based chores for the kiddos. And again, helping your student turn in assignments on time, allowing them also to schedule it on their own, right? If I have a paper that's due next Monday, I know that I should be working on it this week. And so if I put that in my calendar and I set a reminder, I'm able to turn those assignments in and set those reminders to just also keep myself accountable. And then finally, also following a study schedule. Maybe there's a tutor that you can help with, but knowing, let's say, for example, every Wednesday, I have a study hall in my kitchen because that's where I study the best. Or I stay a little bit after school and I take on a couple extra math equations because I know that's where I'm struggling with. So what are some other strategies that we can use for executive functioning, right? In school, it really comes down to time management, right? It's breaking down those long-term multi-part assignments into much more manageable chunks, right? With those timelines. Now, at home, like I have listed right here, waking up independently with an alarm, right? You can set it up, help them set it up, and then give them a day, even a week, test out this new system and see if they're actually able to wake up independently. I also encourage all of the students to hold either a daily, a weekly calendar schedule. That way, either they're visually seeing it, they can draw pictures and note it down, or they can actually physically write it. But if I know I have a doctor's appointment next Wednesday, I'm able to set those reminders, right? And so again, it's the preparing meals independently. It's to do it all without the prompting of those family members. That's the key here. And then lastly, I've added create a doctor's appointment. I personally did not make my own doctor's appointment until I was 18. And I wish I had done it earlier. And at the end of the day, if I know, let's say I have a dentist appointment or they have those 6-month reminders, that's something easy and manageable for all students to take on. That is an excellent first step. So moving on to social skills, what is the end goal for social skills? Social skills is an area where the role playing comes in, right? They start to really be observant, those students. They start to understand a little bit of what a collaborative conversation feels like, right? And so at the end of the day, if our students feel comfortable and confident initiating those social plans, Mark doesn't have anybody to go to the movies with on Friday. I feel comfortable and confident enough to ask him to join me and my friends to go to the movies. It's those baby steps to get to that level of comfort that we need to, right? It's not, we don't want a superstar socialite, let's say. We want somebody who just feels comfortable and confident. That is the key. And that will also help them in all of the other areas, such as self-advocacy. Now, what are some strategies that we can use for social skills? For example, they're able to participate successfully in projects, right? In school projects. They're able to not just, maybe they get to the point where they're delegating everybody's specific role in the project. That would be huge. If they're, like I mentioned, planning and executing a social activity. Maybe they're part of a social skills group outside of school. Also joining local clubs. At CLE, our students, they actually find their forever friends because, again, our young adults, they like a lot of the same activities and have a lot of the same hobbies. So they may like going to the Cat Cafe in DC, skiing, having video game competitions. That is a huge one. And some of our students enjoy hiking. So everybody has their passions, right? And so finding like-minded peers that have similar passions, that's where they will most likely find their group of people, their friends. And then lastly, I did add here, understanding personal boundaries. Some of our students are still adjusting to learning and finding out and understanding cues of personal boundaries. And so it's very important to start that off middle school and high school as well. Self-advocacy, my favorite. So what is the end goal here for self-advocacy? Let's pull that up here. Now, you will never know what you don't know. That's what I want to start there, okay? If our students don't know their rights or when to ask for help, they will not know, period. So understanding your needs as well as articulating your needs, that is the main end goal. Now, in addition to that, we also have know when to ask for help. That happens when you have the ability to self-monitor. Now, by self-monitoring, I mean, you're able to, let's say, articulate your academic goals. You're working to find a college community that also supports your college experience, both academic and social, right? Now, by self-monitoring, I know that I have anxiety when I know an exam is coming up. I could work with my therapist, with my academic team, even my family members to come up with a plan together to really help me relax before the exam, and some breathing techniques in order to really help manage my anxiety level. If I know that, for example, I have trouble turning assignments in, right? I'm able to self-monitor that and then ask for additional time. So those are just a few examples, what I mean for self-monitoring. Now, some strategies for that self-advocacy piece. These are key. When you're going off to college or university, the first thing I ask all of my students is to write a draft accommodations letter. A lot of our students may not know their diagnosis. A lot of our students may know what it is, but they don't understand what accommodations they are currently receiving in high school. And so writing that accommodations letter for college makes it that much more difficult without knowing the facts, right? Also, when you're in those IEP meetings, as a student, you're understanding your strengths, your challenges in real time. So when you are writing those accommodations letters, you know exactly what you need and how you need it. Now, in school, I would definitely recommend student participation in any goal setting meeting, transition workshop, and IEP meetings. I would also include those students in reading their psych letters if they do have a psych educational evaluation. I would also encourage all students to understand their rights and responsibilities post-IDEA, and then also identify their go-to faculty or staff member for support, not just in high school, but also in college. Now, at home, what we could do is start encouraging opportunities for model communication, such as emails, Zooms. I know that our CLE intern had a lot of anxiety just drafting up emails because she was not accustomed to doing it. And so just working through just a couple of them and seeing how they worked, because again, it was in a professional capacity and that was something that she wasn't comfortable with. And so it's getting again to that level of comfort and confidence. And then finally, again, normalizing those strengths and challenges. And again, reviewing those evaluations, because that is key as well. Now, some other things to think about would be maintaining a clean or a college clean living space. So doing weekly chores with a deadline. You can create visuals with incentives. Then we have also managing medications. It's important to understand your diagnosis, know the prescriptions you have and may need, how to also call or schedule for refills, and most importantly, medication safety, such as not sharing it with your roommate or not taking more than the prescribed amount. Now, we also have here financial literacy. What I mean by that is creating a weekly or a monthly budget, also using incentives, using banking apps, Excel spreadsheets, which I will mention a little bit more about that in the next slide. But making finances fun, right? At the end of the day, the goal is to have our students live outside of home, right? Have their own home with a mortgage or apartment with rent. But knowing that in order to pay that mortgage, pay that rent, you need to save money. You can't just go on a shopping spree and get 500 pairs of ski pants, right? Because at the end of the day, if you buy those 500 pairs of ski pants, you won't be able to pay your rent for a few months probably. And lastly here, I have meal planning. So we're creating those lists of favorite recipes that maybe mom or dad used to make, right? We're making sample grocery lists, so that makes it manageable. We can even add visuals to those lists. That way, when they go to the grocery store, we know, oh, dad used to buy this one pasta sauce that was delicious. This is what it looked like. And so when they go, they're able to pinpoint it out exactly. You can even make it similar to an interactive game, something like Top Chef, include a couple siblings, make it a meal prepping extravaganza. But we'll also talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. So money management, financial literacy, right? It's so important for all of our students to have that experience with money. right? They either have a prepaid debit card, they have a debit card, a credit card. Again, I didn't have my first credit card until I was 19 years old. My dad was very much against that. And I listened to his wise words, and he talked to me about credit scores, and just to make sure that I wouldn't go over my limit or damage my credit score. And so having those conversations early on, and having the understanding of what the dollar really means, right? You're setting those clear expectations of a budget for all of your students. You're finding ways also to track spending, whatever works for you and your child, right? Maybe you're adding the totals in the note section in your phone. Maybe you're using one of these apps. At the end of the day, it's just what works for you guys, but starting early is always best. Now for cooking, again, is your student able to sustain themselves overnight for a weekend independently, right? Can they make pasta? Can they very, very simply make cereal and milk, right? How about eggs or cooking something in the oven? These are the tips and the baby steps that we want to get to. And then once they're able to boil water comfortably, measure, know about food and kitchen safety. So an example would be, don't leave the chicken out overnight because that's toxic and you can't eat the chicken after that. That's something that I learned very early on, and my parents almost had aneurysms when I left the chicken out, and I almost cooked it and ate it, and my mom was not a happy camper. So again, it's going to that cooking frozen foods and food safety, right? Okay, so as Kevin kindly pointed out, at CLE, we're providing the individualized approach to post-secondary guidance. We're not just tackling the academics, right? We're tackling the career, the social, and the independent living skills. I mean, we've been around since 1989. We now finally have 7 locations in Texas, California, Colorado, Tennessee, and now in the DC area as well, in Florida. So just a little bit about CLE. Every single student has at least 5 personalized support individuals on their team, right? So the advisor works weekly with students to check in, assess challenges that may have come up throughout the week. The ILS coach works one-on-one with the student at their apartment or within the community. They're going to prepare those nutritious meals, go grocery shopping together, learn to navigate community safety, right? That transportation piece. They're also going to tackle financial literacy. They're going to meet on a weekly basis, go over budgets, and make sure they're able to pay rent for that month. The academic tutor is going to work also one-on-one on content-specific material, right? And study tips and strategies. They're going to help support the executive functioning, including the time management, the organization, the planning, the prioritizing assignments and exams. That's the huge one. And then we also have the social coach who's going to work with our students, both in the group and individually, on navigating social situations, self-advocacy, and roommate conversations. And then lastly, we have our career development coach who's going to analyze, right, based on the assessment that they take on their grit, their personality, their academic level. They're going to find their top 10% of jobs that are best suited for that student. They're going to create a resume, make mock interviews, and then get connected with the community and find out what really speaks to that specific student. So here's a sample CLE schedule. Now it looks very busy and very colorful, right? Every single schedule is going to look different. It's going to adapt according to each specific student's needs. So we have academics here for the one-on-one tutored, and supervised study hall, the academic advising. We have the career coaching here, the resume building, all of that. And then we also have the small social group engagement outings and the social coaching. And then we're also going to have those tailored instruction areas that's more specified for time management, right? Planning, completion of tasks. Those are going to be, that's part of the morning routine essentially. So they're just going to focus on not only problem solving, the setting the goals, and the follow through. So that is just a bit about CLE. And this is my contact information if anybody has any questions. Kevin, I will trade it off to you, and yeah, questions and comments.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carmen. Appreciate you sharing your expertise with us and a little bit more about CLE2. So again, folks who are on, feel free to put any questions in the chat. I know some people did put emails in there as well, requesting the checklist you had mentioned earlier. So I did, for those of you who did put your email in there, I got your names and emails all set. I'll make sure I share that with Carmen. But if you haven't done that yet, you can also reach out to Carmen. Maybe Carmen, would you mind just putting your email in the chat too?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's another way that you all can access that that checklist if you're interested in it. I did have I was thinking about when you're talking in the very beginning there, Carmen, about accessing accommodations in college and how that's going to be different from high school. And I think the biggest jump is a student has this whole advocacy team around them, and often it's the people on this call, it's their parents who have been advocating because they have to help their teen get whatever type of support they need to be successful in a high school setting. And that there's a big change when you get to college. I am curious though, like where can parents really provide support for helping a teen access their accommodations when they're in college? Like where are like the spots where you think, oh, this is really where a parent should dedicate their time and energy to help the young adult be successful in accessing their accommodations?
It's really getting that level of comfort and again, that confidence, right? That's where parents are the most useful. Allowing the students to understand their challenges and making that their superpower. Hey, listen, I have ADHD, but that makes me more powerful in this area and this area, right? So that way, when I'm writing that accommodations letter myself as a student, I know what I'm writing and I feel comfortable and confident doing so. And that is the primary role of a parent, to support and really encourage and empower their own child, right? Again, I really opt and encourage all of my parents to be much more laissez-faire, right? That hands-off approach. See how well they do in high school. See how far and how comfortable they get advocating for themselves, because that's going to be a huge portion of what college and university is going to be like, right? Once they gain that confidence and know they have the ability to do it, that by de facto will empower them. So again, the role of the parent, first and foremost, is just to be as encouraging and supportive as possible. Allow them maybe to fail sometimes, but know that they're failing in a supported environment. They have that safety net, but sometimes we need to fail in order to know that we can succeed.
Awesome. Yeah, we talk a lot about sort of taking positive risks at Beyond Akeela, and that's a chance to have successes and have mistakes and failures and get coaching and the praise when those, and that's where the real learning occurs, we find. So that's awesome. All right, we have one question here about when you spoke about accommodations, there was something in the slides about full-time status for part-time credits. Can you clarify what that means? Or maybe, I think I remember.
Do you remember where?
Let
me actually pull it up so I can.
It was one of the, I think, common accommodations that you can access in a college setting.
Allowing full-time, yes. So what that means is that some students who are registered full-time may have the ability, again, this depends on the college or university, to register as a part-time student. A lot of times this happens when there's a medical emergency or something of that nature, but I would definitely encourage you to talk to the Disability Support Service Center at the college or university to see what their eligibility is for that. But every single college that we've had our students attend are very flexible. Again, those part-time statuses are typically reserved for those medical emergencies.
Gotcha. So you're saying is it maybe something where they can take a slightly lesser course load, but still maintain full-time status at the university? Okay, got it. Great. All right, awesome. Looks like we got the answer, or the question answered, so that's good.
There's also one here from before.
Oh, good.
From Peggy, do technical trade schools typically have disability support services center like traditional college? Yes and no. They do have a support person most of the times. However, they don't have a full center dedicated, let's say, for an academic tutor area or a specific disability support center. Colleges and universities are structured a bit different than technical colleges. But again, it would depend on the technical or trade school that you're going to. Again, college and university, they are by law required to do certain things versus a technical or trade school. They may just have smaller classrooms. And so you already have that intimate setting no matter what. And their support person may just be the only person there, and they may be enough for a college of 100 or 200 or technical trade school of 100 or 200. So everywhere is going to be different, but everywhere is going to have at least one support person.
Awesome. There's another question that came in earlier to me about just sharing the slides. Is that something you would be okay sharing with folks?
Yes, I will. I believe I sent you a copy. I would just make sure. So
okay. Yeah,
absolutely.
okay. So I can just share those out with the when I share out the reporting with them. Any other questions?
There's another one who sent it directly to me.
Great.
Our child has an IEP and is currently a junior in high school. Is it recommended to change to a 504 during his or her senior year before post-secondary? Again, I would talk to their IEP team, their entire IEP team. Bring it up during the meeting because again, I would need to see their transcripts. I would need to talk to the academic team, the student. Every student's going to be different, and that academic team will know best. So bring it up in the IEP meeting, see what they say, and bring the facts also with you, the pros and the cons, and your reasoning as to why you would be interested to switching to a 504.
Are you seeing any more questions on your end, Carmen?
No more questions so far.
All right, all right. Well, I think that may wrap it up. Unless there's any last questions, you got 5 seconds to get them in. All good if not. Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Carmen, for joining us this evening and again sharing your knowledge and some tidbits about CLE2 with our community. Really appreciate it. Families, thank you again for joining us. And we have another one, I think, in about a month or so. So we'll hopefully see some of you then. Carmen, anything you want to say before we head out?
No, thank you so much for hosting. Akeela has been terrific. So absolutely support everything that you guys are doing, and have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining.
All right. Thank you, everyone.